So good afternoon, Erin. It's so great to have you here. This is Erin Mackey, who is a wonderful, incredible Broadway star that we're really excited to be working with and get to interview today. So first and foremost, Erin, I have to ask the question, East Coast or West Coast, which is better?
Ah, well, I'm from the West Coast. I'm from California, but I've lived in New York for 11 years, and I lived in Chicago before that. So I've done Midwest, East Coast, West Coast. You know, I love all,
Yes,
but I will say I do love living in New York. I love an East Coast vibe. Even growing up in California, I kind of always knew I wanted to move to the East Coast. So
that's awesome.
I'm a little partial, but you can't beat the weather in California and the beaches. And I'm certainly not mad that my family still lives there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Is everyone in light of everything that's going on, is everyone back home in California doing well?
Yeah. My younger sister just had a baby at the beginning of the year. So
Oh,
kind
congratulations.
like she's been in a form of quarantine since she had the
Yes,
baby.
right.
She's been home and she's just been, so doing that. And so yeah, it's hard. And my older sister has two kids.
Okay.
One who's 8, so he's in school, so he's obviously not in school right now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think in a way it's kind of nice that everyone's getting some family time that they never get, but it's
Yes.
also obviously it's an incredibly hard and unknown
Right.
time right now for everybody.
And you as well. I'm sure that it's been really challenging for you.
Yeah. I mean, this is a, particularly for our industry, it's really
Yes.
just kind of a crazy time, and I think everyone's just trying to, priorities are obviously people getting better and,
Yes.
flattening the curve and all of those
Yes.
things. So, the industry just has to take just step aside for a little bit.
Right.
But our livelihoods depend on people
Yes.
gathering in sometimes very large groups.
Correct.
So, yeah, so we're going to kind of see how this morphs and changes things,
Right.
but I think people are also adapting, and it's a time if people want to be creative, it's some unexpected, really focused time to do that
Right.
if you want,
Yeah,
so I'm kind of
definitely.
trying to like not put pressure on myself because it's also hard to be creative when you're like, I have to
Yes.
make something. um,
Exactly. Oh, so
yeah.
exactly. So it's been really interesting to read your bio, and you have experience both on Broadway, touring, and then also on TV as well. So one of the things that kind of stuck out to me as something really unique was when you played Joanna in Sweeney Todd with the New York Philharmonic that was also then recorded on PBS. So can you talk a little bit about that experience and maybe for you what made it really unique or special?
I think it's probably one of the most unique things I've ever done and one of the most special experiences I ever got to be part of. It was a really short experience. It was
Mm-hmm.
only about, I was only there for about a week of rehearsal. I think there was a little rehearsal
Okay.
before I got there, but I was doing something else. So it was really just a week of everybody together at the same
Yep.
time. And then we did, I want to say like half a week of like tech and rehearsing with the New
Mm-hmm.
York Phil, and so we did a little bit and then we had like 5 performances. So really all in
Wow.
all, it was a 2-week kind of thing. Now it felt much longer because the
Yes.
days were incredibly long.
Yeah.
um, it was probably like one of the most intense schedules
Mm-hmm.
I've ever had.
Yes.
um, I actually started the whole thing. I had been doing the Light in the Piazza before in California at a theater called South Coast Repertory. And I closed the show on Sunday and took a red eye that night and
Oh my
got
goodness.
landed in New York and went to a costume fitting and started that day.
Oh
So
my
that
goodness.
I was a zombie. Yeah. So, but it's just probably one of the coolest things I've ever done. I mean, Sweeney Todd is just one of the masterpieces out there. So
Yes.
I'm really glad that I actually hadn't seen like the Angela Lansbury George Hearn recording ever.
Okay.
I hadn't seen it live. I knew the music
Mm-hmm.
for the most part. But I didn't know the show inside and out, which
Okay.
I'm actually really glad because I felt like I got to come to Joanna without too many preconceived notions.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
I think like this idea that she's a ditz or kind of,
Yes.
a little, just like kind of crazy and,
Yes.
and I thought it was fun to explore with her. And I loved that Lonnie Price, my director, was like totally on board with this, of just that, like, she was really smart. She was obviously naive. I played a lot of ingenue, so I like to say there's definitely a difference between being naive and being stupid.
Yes.
Two very different things.
Yes.
You can be smart and naive.
Mm-hmm.
And that, Lonnie had cast Audra McDonald as a bigger woman,
Okay.
and Bryn Terfel as Sweeney Todd. And I was like, that's Joanna. Those are Joanna's parents. So like,
Right.
she's got to be like, really like, can I say badass? She's got to be she's got to be a badass. Like, she's got to be able, and by the end of the show, Joanna's the one who shoots somebody to get herself out, so I just saw all these things about her that were kind of like gutsy and brave. And I thought it was more fun to put, and obviously her kookiness is in there, and like that's on the page, that you don't have to put too much on that. So that was awesome. The experience of it being filmed was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's cameras everywhere, and I just tried to stay like really focused on what I was doing. I didn't try, the space was so huge. It's Avery Fisher Hall, which it's been renamed now. I can't remember what the new name is, but it's this massive concert hall. So I kind of tried to just not, because I knew it was being filmed, to not be like totally crazy. Because I knew it was going to be up close and in our face. But for the most part, I didn't really know like when exactly Lonnie was going to edit us all in there. They just filmed everything, and then Lonnie edited it. I think kind of as we did it, and then afterwards, cleaned it up. But he's so good at those things. He's such a pro at those. Lonnie's done so many of those. He just knows how to do it. So I just felt like I just kind of got on the train and went. And J. Armstrong Johnson, who was playing Anthony, we both just were kind of like, how did we get here? We just couldn't even believe it. And hearing the New York Phil play that score, John came and saw it twice because he loved it, and he loved hearing.
Oh my goodness.
Played and sung, and he just loved the production. So yeah, it was really
exciting. Very cool.
Pretty amazing.
So you mentioned something that I thought was really interesting, in that you were like, I had to like almost like not be so big, so intense, because you knew you're being filmed. Can you just kind of mention that, especially for students, about that difference for you, especially having done TV and then also being in live theater, what you find is the biggest difference for you in terms of how you present yourself as an actress?
Yeah, I mean, that experience was very unique in the fact that, like, it's rare that a theatrical event is filmed like that and televised like that with the intention of it being televised like that. Like, sometimes shows are filmed and broadcast, but like this whole concert was put together knowing it was going to be on TV, and knowing that was, the end kind of product. So I think, Lonnie kept things kind of simple, so he knew what he was going to be filming. He knew what he was going to be focusing on. But kind of more in general with like film and TV versus theater, I think really it's just a matter of knowing like the size that you're trying to fill. Does that make sense?
Oh, like, definitely.
So a camera is really close to you.
Yes.
And like moving an eyebrow can be a massive sort of gesture. And I'm not going to claim to be, I'm not as skilled at that. I definitely do more theater, and I like the freedom of theater. I like, I'm kind of a big person that gestures a lot. And, and I think people also have a tendency with TV and film to think, I can't do any of that. That's human behavior. So ultimately, like, we want to see people be people. I just, with film and TV, it can sometimes just overwhelm the screen and overwhelm the space that you're filming, and so it detracts instead of helping. So I find theater to be a little freer in that, just that you don't have to worry about that. And it also like lends itself to really big choices too.
Cool. Kind of going along that, what has been your favorite role to play?
Oh, I've gotten to play some incredible roles. Like I just sometimes I think about it, I'm like, wow, I've checked so many off, and I'm so lucky about like to have done that. Um, well, one of my favorite shows is The Light in the Piazza. So
Beautiful show.
oh, it's so good. It's just such a gem of a show, and that score is it's one of my favorite scores. I just hear it. I hear that harp start, and I just start crying even when I listen
Yes.
to the album. And so that was so high on my list, and I wanted to do it so badly. So getting to do that show was a really big one for me. Playing Clara, and now I want to play Margaret at some point too.
Very cool.
So it's still on my list.
Yes.
But I love that. I love Claire. I love that the music so much. I love singing it, and I just love that character and how just vulnerable she is, and like unapologetically kind of fights for what she wants.
Yes.
And yeah, and you know, has like battled being kept down, I think, for so much of her life.
Yes.
I also got to do Sunday in the Park with George a couple years ago. I got to play Dot, and that was just such a gift. And
Right.
I, again, like I've done so much Sondheim in my career. Actually, I feel like I've done a decent amount. And
I was going to say it's so unique too, because it's not one that unfortunately a lot of people get to do. And that's fantastic that you've had a chance to, you know, like you said, 2 major shows that are just so incredible by him, and you've had that chance.
Yeah. And I mean, I did this show called Sondheim on Sondheim. It was my the second Broadway show I did, and it was a review of all of Sondheim's work. And so I've gotten to know his work incredibly well, and I've always been a fan. But like Sunday in the Park with George, I was not one of those kids that was like that knew it backwards and forwards, and was that I had never seen the Bernadette Peters Mandy Patinkin recording until like I had a call back for the production of Sunday in the Park that I did, and I was like, I think I need to just like watch a little bit to like a little better, because it can be very intellectual in a lot of ways, and just, you know, it's a little bizarre in a way because it jumps forward 100 years. You're in the 1980s all of a sudden. But I think it's probably like the most genius work of his. I think it's my favorite, and Dot was just never on my radar because I always kind of thought, oh, it's a super belty role, and I'm more of a soprano, and I was just I felt like so good about how I ended up being able to sing it like me, and you know, you just so iconically Bernadette Peters, it's hard to like not want to sound like her, and I was like, well, I don't sound like Bernadette Peters, so I have to figure out how I can sing this. And you know, playing a 98-year-old, I was like, how am I going to do that? But that was probably my favorite part, was playing Marie, the 98-year-old. I just loved it. Children of Art, that song. I mean, it's just such like a show, especially for artists. I think tons of people can relate to it. But I just think like for artists, it's just like,
right in the heart. Exactly.
That was great.
That's great. So I know a question a lot of students have is like, how did you get into the field? How did you kind of navigate your way into, you know, what we would consider being extremely successful, you know, in the field? So what is something that you found was kind of your way into all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is nobody has the same way.
Yeah.
So your way is your way. And mine is unique. Mine is kind of crazy and related to my own circumstances. So I grew up in Southern California. I grew up about an hour away from LA. And I grew up in Orange County, and there's a lot of theater there actually, and a lot of children's theater opportunities. So I did children's theater. I was doing theater at my school. Like starting from elementary school. Both of my parents aren't in the business, but are very like musical and value the arts. So I was growing up going to see shows, and my mom loves musical theater. So, you know, I listening to all of the Rodgers and Hammerstein shows. And so that's like kind of where my love for theater started. And starting when I was about 11, I started working more professionally in the film and TV world. I was in my children's theater, and one of the kids there had a manager, and they came and saw our show, and then afterwards asked if I wanted to start like auditioning for stuff in
Oh,
LA.
cool.
And I said, sure. My parents had no idea what any of it was, and neither
Right.
did I. So we kind of started on this journey. And my first audition was for The Parent Trap, the remake with Lindsay Lohan.
Oh, okay.
And I just like went through a bunch of auditions for it, and then I ended up being cast as her double. So like I was the other girl she was talking to, and
Oh my
sometimes
gosh.
I would be cut out. Sometimes you just see the back of me.
Yeah.
So that was my first audition ever, and
Wow.
like professional audition.
Yeah.
I ended up getting it, and it was this like 6 month long shoot. We went to London, we went to Northern California, we shot in Sony Studios, so it was like a 6 month experience, and I learned a ton about
Yeah.
making movies. I had no idea how people made movies.
Right.
So then I started keeping up like auditioning and
Mm-hmm.
doing some work in film and TV until about my senior year of high school, and then I decided to stop doing it. I had to miss a lot of school to do it, and
Yeah.
I was in and out a lot, so it was just I was kind of done.
Yeah.
And I knew I wanted to go to school for musical theater, so I
Okay.
started applying to colleges,
Right.
to different programs, and I kept doing my children's theater and
Mm-hmm.
my school classes and musicals and all of that. I had kept that up too. I did a lot of like competitions too, like I'm trying to remember, Southern California Vocal Association did like a classical competition. There was a Spotlight Awards, so I did these other opportunities to kind of get
Okay.
on stage and sing and get scholarships and that kind of a
Yeah.
thing. Um, and so then I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon for a year in
Mm-hmm.
the musical theater department. And then on my summer break from Carnegie Mellon, I auditioned for Wicked.
Okay.
And at this point, like, I had an agent since I was 11. I had
Right.
managed. I had a lot of things like that just were part of my world that a lot of kids don't
Correct.
have at that
Right.
time. So
Yes.
it sounds like, I mean, it is a very cool story, but like also I had all of these things,
Right.
that really helped get me to
Right.
Wicked when I started. So I started that when I was 19 and
Wow.
went on tour with the show, and a year later I started playing Glinda, and then that was kind of where my professional theater career really started, was with,
Okay.
and I did the show for about 3.5 years, and
What a
then
great way to get started.
it's fantastic. And Wicked really kind of likes having younger people
Mm-hmm.
that they hire, and so I'm like so appreciative. Sometimes I can't believe that they like let me play Glinda when I was 20.
That's awesome. What would you say, kind of along that line, what would you say is like the biggest difference for you doing a touring show versus a Broadway show?
Yeah, so my touring experience, I toured when I was 19
Mm-hmm.
and also did Wicked in Chicago, and I lived in Chicago for 2 years with the show, and then I did it in LA. And then I actually hadn't toured until this past year. I toured again with Wicked.
Oh, okay.
It had been 10 years since I'd done the show.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
I went back after, a decade away, and tons of different experiences.
Yes.
Um, so definitely, I mean, the biggest difference for me where I am in my life is when I'm performing on Broadway, I get to be home.
Right.
This is my home. And so I get to come home to my husband, and I have a dog now, and,
Uh-huh.
all my friends and my park and my
Yeah.
grocery store and my post office and all the things that just make you have your home.
Right.
Um, so that's probably the biggest difference. And so being on tour can be really hard because
Yeah.
you are just having to kind of figure out all those things in every new place.
Right.
When I was 19 and touring, it wasn't as big of a deal. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have as much of I didn't have an apartment,
Right.
I had been living
Yeah.
at home, and then I was on tour.
Right.
So it wasn't quite as difficult. This past year touring, now that I'm married and I have a home here and I have a whole, community here in New York,
Correct.
it was really hard being away, and
Yeah.
just I think yeah, it just kind of depends where you are in your life, how
Mm-hmm.
hard touring can be. I
Yes.
think for everyone there is this sense of like you're constantly moving, but it's also really exciting and it's really
Hmm.
fun to explore these different places and get to see the country and
Right.
um, work in all these different theaters and
Yes.
it's so that's really cool. And also just getting to kind of share theater in places in the country that don't have access to it the same way we do in New York.
Right.
That's a special experience too of knowing you're reaching these audience members that can't go see everything
Right.
that's happening right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Right. That's a really great way to put it. And I love that you're able to talk about both when you first got started and being younger, and then now, like you said, 10 years later, and it's a totally different experience. So I think that, really gives a lot of insight that most people don't think about. Because you don't like you get started, or all of a sudden you're like later on, and I think that, contrast is really interesting to find out about.
Yeah.
So kind of something that I always find interesting, and there's the whole like starving artist, and you're never going to make it. But what is a frustrating experience that you had in the industry, and how did you overcome it?
Hmm. Well, I mean, there's all sorts of frustrations.
Right.
I think everybody has that in all of their work.
Yep.
Um, well, I think it's always hard for me that people don't see the arts as a viable career path.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that happens to, thankfully, had parents that were very supportive of it. I mean, still, it's like, it's an incredibly hard
Right.
situation, and it's hard for people to understand that, you have a job and then you don't have a job.
Right.
And you don't necessarily know how long that's for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think people, I mean, you've got to, pay your rent, however. So
Yes.
like, get your gig, figure out how you can make money when you're between jobs. And that's just like part of how this works.
Right.
Just because you're, waiting tables or doing a temp job or whatever you
Right.
decide is your thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that does not mean that you're not an artist.
Right.
That's part of being an artist. Yeah. And yeah, so I guess that can be something frustrating, is
Mm-hmm.
like people not encouraging kids
Yes.
or people to get into this line of work. And I do understand, like, it's scary, it's hard to understand. It's freelancing, more or
Yeah.
less,
Oh,
like
that's a great way to put it.
you're a freelancer. You
Right.
are employed by a company for a certain amount of time to do a job, and
Mm-hmm.
then you no longer
Right.
are needed and you don't do it.
Right.
um yeah, so it's definitely a bizarre kind of lifestyle. But I will just say that, like, I love these people. I love,
Mm-hmm.
like, artists and creators in general, and people that want to be part of the theater community. Like, it's a really special group of people. It's
Yes.
like, I just found it to be one of the most generous, empathetic,
Mm-hmm.
um, just like good-hearted groups. And that's a very general statement. There's jerks in everybody's
Oh,
business.
yes,
But
definitely.
but like, in general, I just feel like artists are very generous and very wanting to make the world a better place. And
Yes.
so, and I think another unique thing about being an actor, being an artist, is like, you genuinely love what you do.
Right.
And I don't think everybody can say that about their job,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a judgment. I just think that for some people that's not a high priority. Like,
Right. Mm-hmm.
it's it's just what they do.
Yes.
And I think that's a really unique thing about being in a line of work that's creative, is I think for the most, like, it's hard, so you
Yeah.
love it. Like,
Right.
you
Exactly.
genuinely love the actual work itself.
Yes.
So I didn't totally
No,
answer your.
I think that's really helpful, because I especially loved the concept that you brought up, that I think a lot of people can relate to, that this is freelance work. You're just like anyone who's hired, in a computer industry or anything. You're going to be hired for a certain amount of time, and then you're not, and you're hired by a new thing. And I think that's really helpful, I think, for a perspective for students, but also just for, you know, parents or adults to better
Yeah,
understand that this is a similar kind of concept that you would have in multiple careers. So that
it
was,
really is.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's really helpful. So one thing I want to ask is, do you feel that you are where you are and at the best place for yourself, or do you still have some like big aspirations for yourself in the future?
Oh, I totally do.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think this idea of like making it, you know, or
Uh-huh.
like you're successful when I,
Yes.
I don't think maybe this is just very general again, but I think there's always something else, you know. I
Yes.
mean, I used to kind of think like, oh, well, when I'm on Broadway, then I'll have,
Mm-hmm.
or you know, and making my Broadway debut was so incredibly special and wonderful, and I'm so thankful for all of the work I've gotten to do. But like, I made my Broadway debut, and there was part of me that was like, okay, now what? Like, you know, I mean, like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. I was
Mm-hmm.
doing Wicked, and you know, I'd been doing it for 3 years already, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, it's Wicked in this theater now in New York, and it was so.
Yes.
I'm not trying to take away how special it was. It is special, and I'm so proud of that. That's like
Yes.
something I'm very, very proud of. But you know, like that's part of being human, I think,
Right.
and also being an artist is just like, well, what else can I do next? Like,
Yes.
what other story is there to tell? And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely, there's so many roles I want to play still. There's other things I want to do within this industry. I've started to get really interested in this idea of in directing and
Okay.
um, yeah, I mean, I'm like, have very little action going that way, but like I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by a lot of people that have slowly kind of made that transition. And
Okay.
um yeah, it's like there's so many things to do within this industry besides just acting too, and
Yes.
I love it. I'm not done. There's a lot that I want to do, but yeah, I think especially the older I get too, the more things I want to try, and the
Okay.
I think the older you get too, the less scared you are. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still got plenty of fears, but like you just kind of start letting go of some of
Mm-hmm.
those things that when you're younger, it's like, oh, I need to be this, or I need to
Yes.
be that, or I need to do this. And I think that's really helpful when you're younger because it really can motivate you and, you know, keep you ambitious and keep you like being brave and going for
Mm-hmm.
things. But I think as you get older, you kind of start to realize, like, okay, like
Yeah.
I don't need that role. This
Right.
one I love, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
What
there's what I want to do.
what would be one of your dream roles still for you?
I know, like I said, I've gotten to do so many. I do want to do Sunday in the Park again, just because I love it.
Okay. Yep.
I would like a stab at Music Man. I've never done it.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
I've had Marion come my way like 2 or 3 times, and I was never able to do it. Um, I would like to do a My Fair Lady.
Oh, how
I love
fun.
classic musicals, in case you couldn't
Yes,
tell.
I love it.
Yeah, that's my jam. I would love to do a play. I've never done a straight
Okay.
play. And I've started just working with so many directors that are like, you should do a play. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah, you're like, great, here you go. When?
all right. I love singing, but the idea of being able to do a show and not sing, it's like,
You're like, what is
uh,
this on reality, you know?
world. Um, gosh, there's so many. Into the Woods. I haven't done like I want to do a Baker's Wife.
Oh, how fun.
Um, yeah, oh gosh, there's so many. I just love
That's,
musicals.
yeah, that's
King and I,
wonderful.
I want to do King and I.
Oh, great show. Great
Yeah.
show. So I think like to end our time, because it goes so fast, but I always like to, I find this really interesting. If you could sit down with one person and have a meal with them, who would that be and why?
Oh, well, I know who it is, but it's not theater related. Is that okay?
That's what I love. Oh yeah, of course.
Okay. J.K. Rowling,
No way.
Harry Potter. So, oh, it's my favorite series. I have all of the books up there. I have the entire Hogwarts Lego castle in the other room.
Love it.
I'm such a fan, and I grew up with the books. I pretty much was like, the age group that she was more or less writing for as the
Right.
book was coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just want to sit down with her. I don't know. I don't even know what I would ask her. Those books have been so important to me. And I think it's just such an incredible story. And I think the way she writes too, part of why
Mm-hmm.
I love it as an actor is like she writes so much dialogue and these characters that she's created. It's almost like I'm reading a script sometimes
Yes.
because like you can just like you can almost just get the whole story from the dialogue.
Yes.
Um yeah, I just think that like it's this incredibly important story about like this boy who like lost his parents when he was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like one of the biggest themes of the books that's for the past 2 years or so that's really stuck out to me is that like people that we lose aren't really gone forever.
Oh,
Does that
yes.
like
Oh,
they're still with us, I
very
guess is
much
what I
so.
mean. And they're very much with us in our heart. And what I love about her books is in this magical world she can make them come back in various
Yes.
ways. So it's like Harry's parents are within the entire series,
Yes.
even though they've died long before
Mm-hmm.
that any of it has begun. So yeah, I would sit down with her. I'm a
Oh, that's so
huge
great.
Harry Potter fan.
That's so fun. That's fantastic. I love it. Well, Erin, it has been such a delight to talk with you, and I so thank you for doing this series with us. And I am really excited for our students and other teachers to get to experience this. It's been really fun to do that with
Yeah,
you.
I'm
So,
so glad I could. Thanks for
yeah,
having me.
yeah, of course.